Hey guys, tonight we drift through dust-covered kingdoms and forgotten scrolls. The moon outside your window may be silent, but somewhere deep in the pages of Scripture, a whisper calls from a land called Elam. It's not a place you'd see on modern maps, but in one rare and unsettling verse, God says, "I will set my throne in Elam." And honestly, you might not survive that kind of throne room. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, let me know your location and time right now. I always love seeing where in the world this old story finds you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hear the name Elam, and maybe you picture a desert, maybe a tent, maybe nothing. That's okay. Elam's entire existence feels like a shadow hiding behind more famous places. Babylon, Persia, Israel, they hog the spotlight. But Elam is a murmur, a footnote, a ghost at the edge of prophecy. And yet, in Jeremiah 49, there's a haunting moment, a judgment proclaimed, "I will break the bow of Elam, the mainstay of their might." Okay, so God's angry, nothing new. But then, just lines later, this divine whiplash. "In the latter days, I will restore the fortunes of Elam." And even more strange, "I will set my throne in Elam." Wait, what? Of all places? Not Jerusalem, not Zion, but Elam? You tilt your head, just like I did. There's no explanation, no follow-up, no commentary. Scholars mostly ignore it, preachers skip it, but the verse just hangs there, like a hook left dangling from the sky. You picture it now, an invisible throne in a place most people forgot existed. So you go digging. Elam was ancient even in the days of Abraham. Some say it existed before Babel, a civilization with its own language, its own gods, its own crown. Its capital? Susa. You might remember that name. It's where Esther became queen, and where Daniel had his strangest visions. A coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe Elam was never meant to disappear. You lean closer. You start to notice a pattern. Elam shows up at key prophetic moments and then slips away again, like a figure you spot just before waking up. In Acts 2 at Pentecost, as the apostles speak in tongues, the crowd hears in their own languages. Listed among them, Elamites. Wait, they're still around? Listening? Witnessing? You feel the chill yet? Because this isn't just about a lost nation. It's about a pattern. Elam is always present when heaven touches earth, and every time it appears, it's watching. But let's go back to that throne. What kind of throne does God place outside of Zion? Is it a throne of judgment? A throne of mercy? Or is it the beginning of a new order, somewhere we didn't expect? Some theologians argue throne in this verse means dominion, God establishing rule over enemy ground. Others whisper more dangerous ideas, that Elam becomes a future centerpiece in a story we haven't reached yet. Still others, they dismiss it entirely. Just poetic language, they say. But you don't dismiss it. Not tonight. Not when the wind outside feels like it's carrying whispers from Susa. Here's a strange detail for you. Ancient Elamites were known for one thing: archery. That's why God said he'd break their bow. And once that was broken, you'd think the story was over. But instead of destruction, God promises restoration. It's like punishing a child, then saying, "Someday you'll rule beside me." Weird parenting. Unless it's prophetic. You're beginning to feel it now, the duality. Elam is judged, then restored, humiliated, then enthroned, almost as if it must fall before it can carry something holy. And that brings us back to the throne. Maybe it's not about geography. Maybe it's about symbolic authority, God choosing a broken place to rule from, just like choosing a manger over a palace. Or maybe it's literal. And if so, someone is meant to rise from there. A throne needs a ruler after all, and rulers rarely appear without noise. The story doesn't say when, just in the latter days. And if you haven't noticed, the latter days tend to sneak up on you. So now you lie here, wondering if that forgotten verse is waiting to unfold. If Elam, modern-day Iran, is more than just a headline, and if some throne, ancient and invisible, is already being set. You keep your eyes closed now, but your thoughts drift eastward. Not toward Jerusalem or Rome, but toward a land that's always stood on the border between revelation and ruin. You start to feel it. Elam isn't a side note, it's a doorway. The funny thing is, if you ask historians, they'll tell you Elam isn't even Persian, not originally. It predates Persia, predates Babylon. Some even say its language had no relation to anything else known in the region, a linguistic orphan, a loner in the land of empires. And yet, Elam eventually folds into the Persian Empire, becomes part of the kingdom of Cyrus the Great. And Cyrus, well, you know that name, the only non-Israelite ever called my shepherd and my anointed by God. What kind of spiritual legacy does a land like Elam carry if it produced kings like him? You run your fingers mentally along the cracks in that old verse again. I will set my throne in Elam. And a strange question surfaces. Is this throne meant to rule or to wait? Because here's where things get weird. Elam never truly vanishes. It disappears from maps, sure, gets renamed, absorbed, but it keeps showing up in prophetic timelines like a reoccurring dream. Even in Ezekiel 32, there's a strange image. Elam is described as lying among the slain, sword-bearers in the underworld. Yet their shame isn't final, their fate isn't sealed. It reads more like an intermission. Almost like God buried something in Elam and intends to retrieve it later. And just when you think you're overthinking it, the historical oddities stack up again. You remember that Iran, modern Elam, is home to the Zagros Mountains, some of the oldest continuously inhabited lands on Earth. You picture those slopes now, veined with caves and temples older than the flood myths. If God wanted to hide something, an idea, a lineage, a throne, wouldn't this be the place? And maybe it's not just about hiding. Maybe it's about proving a point. Because, let's be honest, when God sets a throne somewhere, it usually flips the world upside down. Zion was no global capital until he chose it. Bethlehem was a feeding trough for sheep until a baby redefined history in its shadow. So if Elam is next, should we be worried or watching? That phrase keeps echoing in your head now. I will set. Not I might, not I have. I will. Future tense, deliberate, intentional. It's like a prophetic fuse lit thousands of years ago, still burning quietly in the dark. You picture it now, some dusty chamber beneath the ruins of Susa, a forgotten throne. Maybe not even stone. Maybe it's symbolic. Maybe it's a movement, an awakening, a moment waiting for the right hour. Or maybe it's literal, because while we spend our time watching the usual players, Jerusalem, Babylon, Rome, Elam has been sitting quietly, waiting for its cue. And here's something you can't ignore. Iran today is one of the most theologically obsessed nations on earth. Politically, religiously, even mystically. It's a country built on prophecy. Not just biblical ones, but its own ancient visions of kings who return, of eras that reset. No wonder the Bible mentions Elam and then goes quiet. It's like God dropped a pin, then said, "Watch this space." And now you're watching. You lie there in the dark, and maybe it's the hum of your fan or the low echo of your thoughts, but you feel something else now. Not fear, not awe, just readiness. Because maybe this isn't a mystery to solve, but a whisper to follow. And if the throne is being set, it doesn't need to be seen yet. Thrones come first, then kings, then change. You exhale slowly, letting the thoughts settle. Elam was judged, Elam was scattered, but the story never said Elam was ended. And one day soon, someone may step onto that throne, and we'll all realize the story didn't forget Elam. Soft whisper. You turn slightly under the covers, the fabric brushing against your skin like the edge of an old parchment. A question lingers. If God sets his throne in Elam, who sits on it? Because thrones, after all, are never empty for long. Your mind drifts to strange imagery, visions tucked inside ancient scrolls that only unroll when the world grows quiet. You imagine a chamber beneath the earth, stone walls lined with symbols no one remembers how to read. Candles flicker, dust hangs in still air, and at the center, a seat, empty, but expectant. Centuries pass, empires rise and fall, and yet that seat waits. That's the thing about prophecy. It's not a blueprint, it's a heartbeat. You don't read it with your eyes, you feel it. And Elam? Elam is pulsing again. You remember what we said about the Elamites at Pentecost, how they were there in the crowd. They weren't major players, they weren't apostles or high priests, but they heard the message. They carried it back east, quietly, without headlines. Some scholars have pointed out that the first Christian communities in Persia were not Roman missionaries. They were locals, converts from those early days. It's almost as if Elam received something holy and planted it deep, like a seed or a promise. And you know how promises work in the Bible. They take time, lots of it. You trace your thoughts back to Daniel. You remember the vision, the ram, the goat, the horns. Elam isn't named there, not directly, but the setting is in Susa, the capital of Elam. And the moment Daniel sees the vision, he's by the Ulai Canal, right in the heart of that land. Coincidence? Please. Prophecy doesn't waste geography. Daniel sees a clash, a ram with two horns charging west, and a goat from the west striking it down. It's brutal, symbolic, and, according to interpretation, it's about Persia and Greece. But deeper still, the battle is set in Elam. Soft whisper, like the land itself is absorbing prophecy, like it's always in the room. You shift slightly, the pillow cool beneath your cheek. You're starting to understand now. Elam is more than a kingdom. It's a container, a vessel, a keeper of unfinished sentences. And here's a detail that always gives me goosebumps. Early Persian converts to Christianity didn't just preserve the faith, they preserved it under persecution, isolation, and silence. They built underground churches, caves, ruins that echo even now with prayers in languages no one translates anymore. The world forgot them, but maybe heaven didn't. Maybe that's why Elam keeps whispering, why the verse in Jeremiah refuses to fade. You think again of that throne, not golden, not adorned with jewels. Maybe it's made of silence. Maybe it's built with waiting. And maybe the one who sits on it won't wear a crown, but will carry something heavier, completion. You picture someone stepping into that space, not a king, not a conqueror, but a messenger, someone the world ignores, someone born under sanctions and sandstorms, overlooked by nations, but not by the divine. You feel the hairs on your arm rise now, because maybe the throne isn't for ruling. Maybe it's for revealing. And maybe the reason it's set in Elam is because that's where humanity stopped listening the first time. You let the thought linger, letting it settle over your breathing like mist. And for a moment, the room feels ancient, heavy, like you're not in the 21st century anymore. You're somewhere older, somewhere where scrolls crackle and voices still echo across stone. Maybe Elam isn't trying to return. Maybe it never left.
The air in your room feels thicker now, like history has slipped through the walls and is quietly sitting with you in the dark. You stare into the blackness and begin to sense that Elam wasn't just preserved, it was repurposed. There's something strange about how often the East appears in biblical imagery. Not the romanticized East of spice caravans and wise men, but the mysterious East, where messengers arrive unannounced, where kings are born unexpectedly, and where prophecies begin their march westward. It's from the East that the Magi came, remember? Guided by a star, they brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh to the infant Messiah. But no one really asks where they actually came from. From the East, Scripture says. That's vague. But if you ask historians, some will suggest they were from Persia, from lands once known as Elam. You blink slowly. Could it be? Could the very first humans to recognize Jesus as king have been remnants of a forgotten prophetic kingdom? You remember, these weren't kings in the traditional sense. They were watchers, wise men, scholars, astrologers, perhaps priests of an ancient order whose origins were older than Babylon. They didn't just notice a star, they understood it, as if they'd been waiting for it. And who waits like that? Who carries that kind of long memory? Maybe the people of Elam. There's a Persian legend, not biblical, but whispered in firelight, of a star that appears only once, and when it does, a new era begins. It's called Setare Emer, the star of affection. It's said to shine for only a night, and whoever sees it is bound to a great calling. Sounds suspiciously familiar, doesn't it? You smile. Not everything that matters is in chapter and verse. Some truths slip between the lines, between cultures, like water through fingers. That's how prophecy works sometimes. It seeps. So now you begin to wonder, what if the throne in Elam isn't just about God reigning there? What if Elam recognizing him first?
Soft whisper. In the great unfolding drama of Scripture, maybe we've been watching the wrong players. Maybe the power isn't in those who dominate history books, but in those who watch quietly from the shadows. And here's something few people know. In early Christian writings from the East, especially from Persian believers, Jesus is often referred to not as king or lord, but as the voice. The voice that calls through deserts. The voice that shakes mountains. The voice that returns. And where did they say he returns? You guessed it. The East. Elam.
A throne waits in silence, and the voice prepares to speak. You feel it again, that pull, that whisper just beneath your breath. It doesn't shout, it doesn't force, it just asks, what if it's already begun? Not the end of the world, but the start of something ancient returning. A memory, a light, a call to remember a name, a land, a throne that never truly left. You shift your weight slightly, pulling the blanket up to your chin. The world outside your window is quiet, but your thoughts are racing, backward, forward, in spirals. You try to tell yourself it's just an old verse, just dusty scripture, but your heart doesn't believe you. Because once a throne is promised, it's never unpromised. It just waits.
You start to sense it now. Not just a throne waiting in Elam, but a presence. Not looming, not loud, but ancient. Like something that hasn't moved in a very long time and is finally beginning to stir. You close your eyes, and in that dark stillness, your mind reaches toward the Zagros Mountains, rising like the jagged ribs of sleeping giants. For centuries, people believed that prophets didn't die in the East. They slept, hidden in caves, beneath stones, beneath time itself. And in one Persian folktale, there is a man they call the sleeper beneath the mountain. No one knows his name, but they say he'll awaken when the stars align again, when the throne of heaven descends not in Jerusalem, but somewhere farther, somewhere no one would expect. A ridiculous story maybe, but then again, prophets sleep everywhere in Scripture. Elijah rests under a broom tree. Jonah curls up beneath vines. Jesus naps in storms. Rest isn't absence, it's preparation. So now you wonder, if someone is asleep in Elam, under the dust and silence, what happens when they wake up? You remember what we spoke about in Daniel's vision, the ram, the goat, the shattered horn? But there's something we didn't cover. In that vision, a little horn rises, small at first, almost unnoticeable, but eventually it grows strong, bold, even defiant. It challenges the heavens, casts truth to the ground, causes chaos. And where does this vision take place? Elam. You shift under the weight of the implication. Could it be that the throne in Elam doesn't signal comfort, but conflict? Could the one who rises be the wrong one? It's uncomfortable to consider. We all want prophecy to point to peace, to restoration, but the throne in Elam might not mean the return of the rightful king. It could mean the arrival of a pretender. And that's what scholars still argue about. Some believe this verse in Jeremiah points to God's future reign, a sign of hope, a poetic restoration. Others believe it's ironic, a symbol of judgment, disguised as a throne, a false kingdom, a spiritual counterfeit. And then there are the third group, the quiet ones. The ones who don't speak at conferences or write best-selling theology books. They live near the borderlands. They pray in broken churches. They wait. And they believe the throne is real. And it's not set for judgment. It's set for a return. You feel a chill again. Not fear, but that deep, reverent kind of chill. Like standing in the shadow of something massive and ancient. You don't run.
You just listen. You imagine the throne again, still empty, still silent, but not forgotten. It's waiting for the stars to align, for the right voice to echo through the mountain, for the sleeper to rise, not in violence, but in unveiling. And maybe that's why Elam had to fall all those centuries ago. Not because it was cursed, but because it was chosen. A land broken, scattered, judged, then watched, preserved, remembered. You breathe slowly, letting that realization fill the space around you. The world has forgotten Elam, but prophecy hasn't. Neither has the throne. And soon, the sleeper might stir.
Soft whisper. The night feels different now. Quieter somehow, but heavier. As if you're not just lying in your bed anymore, but beneath the same sky where prophets once stood barefoot in the dust, hearing things too vast to speak aloud. And the throne in Elam, it no longer feels theoretical. It feels imminent. You imagine, for a moment, walking through the ruins of Susa, not as a tourist, but as someone following a thread. The bricks whisper. The wind carries the weight of things left unsaid. A cracked foundation, a worn stone basin, maybe once used for oil, or blood, or tears. You bend down and press your hand to the dirt, and it feels warm. Not in temperature, but in memory. You realize this land hasn't been abandoned. It's been recording everything, every footstep, every war, every prayer, every broken promise, and every whispered hope, all stored deep in its soil like a waiting scroll. And then it hits you. Maybe the throne isn't physical at all. Maybe it's a convergence, a point where judgment, mercy, time, and truth all meet. And maybe Elam is simply the only place prepared to hold it, because in a world obsessed with noise and dominance, Elam has become the opposite: silent, forgotten, empty. And in God's strange poetic style, isn't that exactly where he likes to show up? First shall be last, the proud humbled, the silent heard, and the empty filled. And so the image crystallizes, a throne not rising from politics or conquest, but from dust, from the edges, from a land that has waited quietly beneath the radar of history for longer than we dared notice. You wonder who will sit on it. Will it be the voice who whispered stars into being, or the pretender with horns hidden beneath charm? Because let's not pretend the world isn't ripe for deception. You know how this goes. Real prophecy doesn't sparkle. It unsettles. It lingers. It asks you to wait. You pull the blanket tighter. The air has shifted. Maybe in your room. Maybe somewhere far east. And just as you're drifting, you remember something. In Revelation, the final scroll, there was talk of thrones. Many of them. Some visible, some not. One belongs to the beast, one to the elders, one to the Lamb. But not all thrones are named, and maybe, just maybe, one of them is in Elam. You lie there now, on the edge of sleep, with this strange and holy idea tucked behind your thoughts, that somewhere, beneath the soil of forgotten prophecy, something is rising. Not fast, not loud, but surely, like a crown descending through time. And if you ever go to Elam and stand where Daniel once saw horns and where Esther once stood in silence, maybe you'll feel it too. That thrones do not disappear. They simply wait to be noticed.
And now, as the final thoughts settle like dust around you, let the hum of the room soften. Let your breath ease into a slower rhythm, like the slow turn of ancient pages. You've traveled far tonight, through broken kingdoms, unspoken verses, and the quiet corridors of prophecy. The throne in Elam still waits, but you don't have to. You can let go now. There's nothing left to chase tonight, no riddles to solve, just the slow comfort of stillness. The questions can wait. The answers will come in time, like whispers returning on the wind. Let the image of that throne dissolve, like sand through fingers. You are safe. The room holds you, like time holds memory, gently, without pressure. And if in some distant hour you hear something stir beneath the mountain or feel a breeze from the east that carries no source, just smile. Prophecies do that sometimes. They drift into dreams. Good night, traveler. You listened well.